Publishing Spokesowl, and I've got an exciting presentation for you today. This month, in October 2021, Snowy Wings Publishing turned 5 years old, and we also celebrated the publication of our 100th book. To celebrate this milestone anniversary, several of our authors got together for a special virtual author panel. Enjoy the show!
Hey, I'm Lisa Chiavari.
And I'm Jane Watson.
I'm the founder of Snowy Wings Publishing, and she is the co-founder of Snowy Wings Publishing.
And I'm Sylvia,
the Snowy Wings Publishing Spokesowl. Today we are going to be answering a bunch of questions that were submitted to us by readers for our author panel, but to start with, we had a question from Regina that some of the other authors thought would be best for the two of us to answer, and that was, how did all of the Snowy Wings authors come together? So back in summer of 2016, I was talking to Jane and a couple of our other author friends, Selenia Paz and T. Damon, and we were talking about being indie authors and how we might be interested in getting hardcover editions for our books. And at the time, Ingram Spark did not offer free ISBNs, so we were talking about maybe forming a shared imprint with each other so that we could get ISBNs and get hardcovers through Ingram. But we never really did anything with it. And then later that summer, several of our author friends wound up getting the rights reverted for their books, and so they were looking to self-publish. And so I thought, why don't we open it up to a bunch more authors and maybe try to make a co-op out of this? And so got in touch with them, they were all into it, and so we did it. And October was when we officially chartered, I guess. We formed the website, we formed our author group, and that's really when we got our start. And so it's hard to believe that it's been 5 years, but it's been a really great experience.
And when we were talking about starting the co-op, I had the idea that we could have a mascot. And since the name was Snowy Wings, I thought it would be really cute to have it be a snowy owl. And I just happened to have this really cute plushie, and I was like, she can be Sylvia, and she can be our little mascot. And she's really taken off. Everybody seems to really love Sylvia and love seeing the pictures that we do together. And she's just taken on her own personality, and she is just so cute, and we just can't believe that it's been 5 years.
Hey everyone, I'm Jamie Krakover. My book Tracker 220 published with Snowy Wings about a year ago, and it is a YA science fiction.
Hi everyone, I'm Dorothy. I'm the author of the Curse of the Phoenix series, which is a YA fantasy, and also the Empire of the Lotus series, which is YA urban fantasy.
Hello, I'm Victoria Gilbert, and I wrote the Mirror of Immortality series, which right now is 2 books. Hopefully someday will be 3. And that's with Snowy Wings, and it's a YA fantasy, which is based on Hans Christian Andersen fairy tales.
Hi everyone, I'm Selenia Paz, and I am a writer of middle grade. My series with Snowy Wings is the Leyenda series, which has 3 books inspired by Mexican folklore.
Hi everybody, I'm Jane Watson.
and I'm Sylvia.
And I am the author of The Taming of the Dude Bro series, which is a young adult romantic comedy series based off of Shakespeare's comedies. So far in the series, there's the novella, The Taming of the Dude Bro, and then the full-length novel, A Midsummer Night's Dude Bro. And I am also the editor of the young adult Greek myth retelling anthology, Sing Goddess.
Hi, I'm Amy McNulty, and I wrote the YA urban fantasy series, Blood, Bloom, and Water. And I also wrote the YA fantasy series, The Nevervale, Fall Far From the Tree, and the standalone Ballad of the Beanstalk.
Hi, I'm Lee Hellman. I'm the author of Orbit, which is a YA speculative sci-fi novel, and I also have stories in the two of the Snowy Wings anthologies, Magic at Midnight and Sing Goddess.
Hi, I'm T. Damon, and I have the Forest Spirit series with Snowy Wings, and it is like a middle grade kind of YA, I guess, fantasy series.
Hi, I'm Lissa Chiavari. I am the author of the Iamos trilogy, and I am also the editor of the anthologies Perchance to Dream and Magic at Midnight, which was co-edited with Amy McNulty.
Hi, I'm Annie. I'm the author of The Hearts Out of Water and the Souls Out of Ireland series, both of which are YA fantasies based on Celtic mythology.
Hi, I'm BJ Person. I have a short story with the Snowy Wings anthology, Magic at Midnight, and my first novel with Snowy Wings is a middle grade spy kind of adventure, and it releases in 10 days. I'm very excited about that.
I always wanted to write since I was a little girl. I wanted to be a published author. And then when I was in college, I would just write a little and then never finished anything. And then in 2012, I think it was, I read The Hunger Games. And I don't know, it just really inspired me. And all of a sudden I wrote this novel in 9 days that need to be revised a lot. But I felt like, oh, I'm ready to get out there and get an agent, which I did. And we went to the traditional publishing route for a couple of years. And then eventually I got my rights back. And so then in 2016, I started self-publishing. And then I feel like the floodgates opened. And because I'm in control of when I can release and if I can release anything, I just write constantly. And now I'm up to 22 books under 3 different names. And before that, I'd written maybe like 3 or 4 books. But so that's how I got to this point.
So I've always been interested in writing. When I was super little, I would write on my parents' computer back before our home computer had internet a long time ago. And my writing inspirations were my parents, honestly. They were both writers. My dad was a journalist and my mom did technical writing, but they both also just read constantly. And my dad would write us stories when we were little. So they were my inspirations. And then I started self-publishing in college and just had a lot of fun with it. And I eventually signed with an agent and just put out some different stuff. And I found Snowy Wings a couple years ago now through Amy, actually.
I'm also one of those who always was interested in telling stories and writing things down. I remember when I was in grade school, we had this activity where you would write like 3 lines of a story and fold the paper so the next person could only see the last line, and then the next person would continue the story. And I just, on the one hand, I loved that because the stories were so ridiculous and amazing. But on the other hand, I'm like, why am I not in control of this entire story? And so, yeah, I think from there, it just blossomed into me always wanting to control the story and take readers on a journey. And yeah, and then as I got older and saw all these amazing books coming out, I thought, well, maybe I could do this like for real. And I gave it a shot. And as far as my inspirations, I mean, I can remember being young and reading Judy Blume and even getting older and reading Michael Crichton, Stephen King. And then then all the YA books took off, like Twilight and Hunger Games and Divergent, and I mean even Harry Potter, if you want to count that as middle grade and YA. And I think that really inspired me to give it a shot.
Yeah, it's kind of like with everyone else. Like I've always written, even when I was like just when I was really young, and my mom really enjoyed my writing, and she always told me that I should write. Really though, I was, like most people here, an avid reader growing up, and so I mean, I was really inspired by. I like classic authors, so I was really into Poe growing up. Like my daughter's named Lenore, so you can tell that I loved Poe, and like Mary Shelley, and I just like, those old timey authors, and so that's what really inspired me.
I was actually one of those kids that hated writing growing up. They used to in first grade send us home with these story starters, and I would sit at the kitchen table and cry because I thought my ideas were stupid. And my little sister would run around the kitchen table yelling out idea after idea after idea and drive me crazy. So I didn't get a great start with writing. But I think my love of writing actually developed from my love of reading. In high school, I took a science fiction English class, and they assigned us to read Ender's Game. And I had never read a book like that before, and so that really inspired me to go out and look for other things that are similar. I read the whole series, got into Harry Potter, some other things, and then I came across a series called The Secrets of the Immortal Nicholas Flamel. And after I read that one and started doing some fandom things with that, that's when the ideas really started swirling, and I started playing with characters and names and those kinds of things, and then wrote my first manuscript from there. So, uh, yeah, long path to get there, but from hate to love, I guess.
Like most people here, I always loved to read. Once I started reading, I couldn't stop, and I was just reading, stacks of books all the time. And so then I got interested in, writing as a child, just to make my own stories. But I played around with it for years and years and years. And I got busy with my life. I became a librarian, worked in that for many years. So, I have a family and all those things, and I just didn't do the writing. I just thought, oh, well. And then when I was in my 50s, and I say this because I always want to tell people it's never too late to do these things, to do your dreams. I decided to write a book just to prove that I could write one, just for myself. And I did that, and eventually led to me writing more books, because those books, the first books, are in a drawer. But the finally got published. Was 58 years old when I got published. But since then, I've written, well, I have currently, I have to always remember, 14 books I've written, 12 of which have been or will soon be published. So, my story is that you can start later in life and still accomplish a lot of things. And I have contracts for many more books. So it's, an ongoing thing. So do it. If you want to write, do it.
I think one of the authors that I really admired when I was young was actually an author here in Houston. And her name was Joan Laurie Nixon, and she wrote a lot of young adult mysteries. So I loved her books. I would go to the public library and I would check out everything that I could. And I wish I had met her before she passed away. So she was definitely one of my inspirations. And then the other was, I read this book called Strider by Beverly Cleary. And it was the sequel to the Dear Mr. Henshaw, where he writes to the author. And I loved Strider. I felt like I related so much to how much he wrote in his journal, and he ran with his dog. And I thought I would love to one day write something that kids would love, that somebody would love. And so I told Lisa my idea, and she loved it. And I feel like I needed someone to tell me, hey, that's a really good idea. I believe in you, and go for it. And she did. And I'm so glad I did.
So I was also a big fan of old timey books as a child, a weird child. I was the weird child who was like, I'll read Jane Austen. Let me read Frankenstein. Let me read, Dracula, whatever, those kinds of books. And I've since regressed, like I've aged in reverse, where now I read, I can still read those things, but I read, I'm having a second childhood, teenagehood reading things now. But I think that I grew up in a family where we read a lot and stories were really important. And I kind of related to people and family members and friends and other people, the world, through stories. And I think I was maybe trying to remember maybe second or third grade, when I had a teacher who, after giving us writing assignments, and I turned something in, and she was kind of like, this is really good. You should pursue this. And that was the first I'd ever had of a concept that like I could pursue writing as something to do with my life. And that's kind of, I think from that moment, I was like, this is what I'm going to do. I don't know quite how it's going to work. I don't know as I grow up and as I navigate the world as an adult, how that's going to look in terms of the logistics of living in the world. But this is what I want to do. So I think that's kind of where it started for me. And those, I would still say that kind of Jane Austen and Agatha Christie. My mom read a lot of Agatha Christie and passed that down to me, and those kinds of stories, especially like female writers in time periods in which they were not as prominent, was an early inspiration for me in terms of thinking of how to approach fictional worlds I wanted to create.
I have always loved writing and loved books. When I was about 6 years old, I wrote my first book because it was called the How to Take Care of Your Bunny book, because I wanted my parents to buy me a rabbit. I drew a picture of me walking the rabbit on a leash on the cover, so it didn't work very well. But I was the kid in elementary school that I literally read every Choose Your Own Adventure novel that my elementary school library had. And I loved the adventure, and I loved being able to choose what to do. And, you know, I had the like 3 fingers all in the thing so that I could go back and see everything. And I kind of think that that evolved like my ideas for plotting and stuff. And when I got like really heavily into like reading and fantasy worlds and dragons and all that stuff, we're finding out magic, R.A. Salvatore and Brandon Sanderson, I was just like, this is what I want to do. And so I actually started writing high fantasy for adults, teen friendly stuff, you know, published several of those. But then I'm a very whimsical kind of person. I'm a giant kid. And I like things that are wholesome and hopeful and inspiring. And so when I first started writing Super Drew, it did not fit at all with what I had been doing with the publisher that I was with. But I had met Lissa through an anthology that we both contributed to. And I told her my ideas for Super Drew and showed her what we had. She was like, this is really awesome. You should really do this. And she was like, if you ever want to come over to Snowy Wings and do, you know, middle grade author thing, please do. I sat on it for ages and ages because I was like, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I can do this. But finally, I was just like, you know what? I love this book so much. And I'm so passionate about it. And I genuinely think it's like, I really think it's the best book I've ever written. And so I was like, okay, I have an in, let's just go for it. And I'm so very glad I did, because it's been terrifying, but it's also really, really exciting. So.
I came to Snowy Wings through some difficult experiences, and when I found all my fellow writers here and discovered the support that I was getting, it was like found family, and it was really nice to have like-minded people sharing the same experiences and helping each other out, and it's just really great to be part of this team. So I think that's what I like best about Snowy Wings.
I'm actually going to cheat and give 2 answers, but the first is that, you know, I write a lot of YA sci-fi, and that can be tricky in the traditional publishing market. So I like that I can write that and nobody will tell me, no, this won't sell, or we don't know how to sell this. I can kind of do whatever I want. And then my second answer would be all of the people here, all of these authors that have so much knowledge that I can leverage, and you know, getting to root for each other and share each other's awesome books that are published. So
I also really love the freedom of being able to write what I dream about. How I see it in my head is how I can get to write it, and also the freedom of choice with other things like your cover, and the author group, because I can go and ask a question or see experiences that other authors have had in the group and that they share. And I've learned a lot from that. I feel like I found a lot of resources, and I'm always learning more about publishing because of the group.
The broader movement towards like collaborative or co-op publishing, or indie authors coming together and supporting each other, is something that I think sort of almost from a philosophical perspective that I really like. And I think that it's a good option that I think was something that was available kind of way in the past, but for more recent kind of iterations of what publishing could look like, or how you could get published, or what freedoms you did or didn't have as an author, in terms of like doing it as a business. I think that co-op publishing offers not just the business aspect of it, but also the collaborative, creative environment of being able to be around other writers and bounce ideas off of them, or hear what they're doing, or sort of have a community that supports not just kind of business opportunities, but also supports you as an artist, and that I'm able to receive that, but also give it as well. So I think that that's been a really positive part of being with Snowy Wings.
Well, what I like best about publishing with Snowy Wings is the freedom that comes along with it. I think Amy mentioned earlier that, there's no real timeline. You can write things when you want to, and there's no pressure on you. Personally, though, I really like working with Lissa because we're old friends, and Jane. So it's really nice to work with them and just, have the professional as well as the long-lasting friendship. And even though we haven't been able to do this for 2 years, I really love going up to Portland to hang out with Lissa and Jane, and we go do the book festival, and that's always a really fun time for me. And so, yeah, I love being with Snowy Wings.
I would say I agree with everyone else's answer. And then also, I've tried self-publishing on my own, and I didn't have the same kind of resources that we do collectively. It's mostly the people in charge of the co-op come up with these opportunities that I can't get on my own, just like, reviews from different publications and getting into libraries. And so I appreciate that we can come together and help each other's books out.
My favorite books that I've ever published are actually have two that are tied, and they are Different Worlds and New World, which are the second book and the third book, kind of in the Amos trilogy. Basically, when I started out writing the series, my intention was to just have it be 3 novels. And when I was partway through writing the first book, I came up with an idea for a novella that would take place between books 1 and 2, and it wasn't going to be real long, but it wound up getting to be over 200 pages long, and it really needs to be read in between books 1 and 2. So it's still called the Iamos trilogy, but it's 4 books, but one of the books is a novella. But I just really, really enjoyed the story taking place while the main characters were off doing one thing, the secondary characters were doing another thing. I don't know how to say this without spoiling it too much, but I really love those characters, and I really love seeing how their lives changed when the main character was away from them. And then the New World is just a really fun book. It had a lot of things that I was excited about for a long time before I finally sat down to write it, and it turned out pretty much exactly how I had hoped it would. And so I just really, really love that book from start to end. I just love it.
My favorite book that I have published is probably The Haunting, just because I like scary books.
I think the favorite book I've written is always the last one I've written. And that's certainly true right now. The Court of Maeve was my most recent book. It's out now. You can get it now. So in my most recent book, I really dug into Irish history and like Iron Age history, and I got to incorporate that. So that was a lot of fun. So yeah, the Daughters of Morgan series would be my favorite series that I've published.
The favorite book that I published is probably my first one, Nobody's God, is just because I have good memories of starting down this path of writing. And I've always been obsessed with the movie Labyrinth, and it's heavily influenced by it with the stubborn girl and the Byronic hero. Only he's less villainous, I hope, than Jareth is in the movie. So that's why I like that one the most.
My favorite book that I have published is not actually a book, it's a short story. It's called Magic All Around, and it was published in the Snowy Wings anthology, Magic at Midnight. And I really love that story because I got the idea when I was reading through a Hans Christian Andersen anthology of all of his fairy tales. I was looking at the story, The Goblin at the Grocer's, and there was this part where the goblin gives the objects in the store the gift of gab. And my cat at the time was just a kitten. Her name is Beatrix, and she's very vocal. She's very talkative. And so we always say that she's blabbing, that she's got the gift of gab. And I thought, oh, it would be really cute if I somehow incorporated the gift of gab into the story, but had it be a kitten that the goblin, who's the main protagonist, gives the gift of gab to. And then she's just so cute, and she just really made the story flow, and I really like it.
I think I'm kind of a hybrid. I'm an engineer as my day job, so I do like the logical organization progression of things. So I do write outlines, but my outlines are pretty sparse. It's usually like chapter by chapter, one sentence, here's what's going to happen. And then I can kind of fill in the blanks and let the let the characters kind of have a mind of their own. So I think they call that a plotster, but I also saw somebody on Twitter about a week ago call it a puzzler, which I kind of liked because you kind of puzzle through it, figure it out. So I'll stick with that, I guess.
I have sort of the same method as Jamie has. I'm at heart a plotter because I need to know where the story goes, but and I plotted out little sentences to lay out my chapters, but sometimes I go off course and then I have to replot.
Well, the other books that I write are mysteries, and so I've really gotten into plotting. I've always plotted my books, but again, like everyone else has said, you get to a certain point where sometimes when you're writing, where you realize that what the characters have evolved into, the scenes, that you really need to take a detour or make some changes. So I allow for that in my outlines.
I think I'm also a mixture of both. I'll start off with an outline and plotting each chapter, and then when I'm about halfway through the book, the characters are just doing their own thing, and I'll rely on the outline, but then probably after that, I also just let my imagination go.
When I write a book, I tend to write out the general idea, and then I go into a lot of detail of, okay, this is going to happen in this book, and here are the characters, and here are their motivations, and the relationships, and their dynamic, and their descriptions. But I don't go so far as to completely outline the entire book, as in, this is going to be how many chapters it is, and this is going to happen in this specific chapter. I kind of let it go. That being said, when I'm working on a book series, I'm more of a detailed plotter where I want to have all of the little finite details figured out before I start writing the series, so that I make sure that I don't write myself into a corner or come up with an idea that I like a lot better later that then I can't go back and fix, that'll like make a major plot hole. So that's why a lot of my series have not come out yet, because I keep thinking about how I want to make them perfect before I actually publish them.
Well, I wrote my first book, Nobody's Goddess, as a Panzer. And that's also the book I had to revise the most. And then I wrote a couple other books that I could not end because I couldn't figure out what I was doing. So from then on, I've always written an outline, and then I turn into a plots or whatever we were calling it. And I usually go off outline, and then I try to get back to it by the end. Just feels better knowing where I'm going.
So it sounds like we're all pretty much in agreement about how we do this, and I'll continue the trend. I tend to I don't usually write outlines as like the way traditionally people think of outlines written. I'll more likely almost write like character biographies and maybe like little summaries of chapters or sections or things like that. But from there, I just kind of jump in and to see where the story takes me.
Yeah, I'm kind of like everyone else too. Like Lee just mentioned, I do at the very beginning, I'll do like character biographies. So I kind of know who's gonna come in during the story. And before I start writing, I'll have a general idea of like what I want to happen or where I want things to go. But then once I start writing, I'm like a full-on channeler where I literally will black out for like 5 hours and then I have pages written and I'm like, okay. And then judging off of that, like I just kind of see where things go and then try to like weave in the elements that I had kind of plotted out at the beginning. But I really just kind of like to see where the story takes me.
Okay, guys, I have to break the trend. I'm sorry. I'm a plotter. I'm such a plotter. Everything you guys are describing makes me really anxious. My outlines are like 5,000 words. And if something veers off outline mid writing, I have to stop and go back to my outline and fix it. So I'm a plotter all the way.
I'm gonna go the exact opposite of Annie. I am a hardcore pantser. When I first started writing Super Drew and the Secrets of Dawn Hill Corp, which is my novel that's coming out with Snowy Wings, I literally woke up from a dream at 4 o'clock in the morning and I started writing and I ended that day at like 8,000 words, which I'm a very slow writer. That doesn't happen. But I have a whiteboard in my office that I write like main plots just so that I don't forget if I have an idea, but I can't, if I outline, I'm done. I can't do a thing with it. So
That's really interesting. I thought that I was going to be ending this by saying, we all write the same way. And then Annie and BJ proved not. So it's nice that we've got a good mix of people who do things in different ways.
I think this comes out of me loving fantasy and sci-fi, and I've written both, but it doesn't seem to work as well for me in the traditional publishing sphere. So, it's really nice to have options to explore those kinds of things. And if I could, and I hope to do this at some point, I want to write more in my fantasy series. And also, I have an adult sci-fi that would be with Crimson Fox, which is the sister imprint. But right now I don't have the time, but I keep thinking about them all the time. And so, I've been told, it's because my agent, who's wonderful, has tried to get these things out there, and she's really tried. And the tone or something is wrong from the market. I don't know what it is. I mean, other books sell, those don't. So I think it's sometimes with the market, it's not, and this is something I always like to tell aspiring authors and other authors too, is that I've discovered it's not just the storyline, but sometimes, if something's really popular in the market, a certain kind of tone and style, and I'll use fantasy as an example. Right now, there's a lot of really sort of dark, very dark, and kind of, I don't really know how to explain it, except it's not my tone, it's not my style. And so my stuff doesn't work for the market, but that doesn't mean it's bad. And so that's one thing that I always like to tell people, that sometimes you might have to take another path because it's just where the market is right now. And, your book may be wonderful, but it's just not going to fit into a profit scenario for a traditional publisher. So having other options and being able to see those books you love out there in the world is a great thing. So I want to do my adult sci-fi. I want to finish. I have 2 books written. I want to write the 3rd, and I want to put them all out one of these days.
I've really lucked out because I pretty much write what I want to anyway, and that's the beauty of indie publishing. I don't have to worry about pleasing a publisher or worrying too much about what the market wants. It's different if you're an author who is specifically writing to market for the purpose of,
making a profit. And it really depends on what your goals as an author are. Some authors choose to write specifically for the purpose of making a profit off of it, and some people choose to write for fun because they don't have to rely on their writing to support them. So whatever it works for what you personally as an author are looking for. But in my case, I couldn't bring myself. I tried to write to market for profit. I really did not enjoy it. I tried working with a traditional publisher. I also did not enjoy that. So allowing myself to have the freedom to just write the books that I want to write, the stories that I want to tell, and not have to worry about what the market says about it has been really liberating for me. And it's something that I'm really glad that I have the ability to do.
As an LGBT writer, I tend to want to focus on LGBTQ stories, especially since it's not that there's definitely more than there's more than there used to be, that are both indie and kind of mainstream, but there's still an overall lack, but also a lack in particular, like you see specific genres that see more of those storylines or those like character focuses. And would I would love to write genres that I'm more invested in, like horror or mysteries or sci-fi, these sorts of things. I'd like to write specifically LGBTQ stories for them, not just stories that kind of hint at characters who have sort of subtext or whatever. Like I'd like to write stories from kind of that lens. And of course, there's always not from my perspective, but from like the business perspective of the fear that like, oh, well, you'll pigeonhole a market, or that won't be, it won't be there won't be broad interest for it. So I think it doesn't really stop me from planning on writing those kinds of stories. But if I would say that that's kind of what I'd like to see both from myself and just from other creators in general is when we talk about like diverse stories and diverse voices that we see a broadening across genres and across kind of nuances of stories where you're getting to see a vibrant tapestry that is being brought out for kind of mass marketing and mass consumption, where people are being encouraged to further read and explore stories that are maybe not exact, that aren't just the majority story. So I think that that's what I'd like to write and also what I'd like to see.
So my advice kind of goes off of that whole thing that everyone's heard, which is write what you know. But my big thing is to really write what you love, because there's just something about having a passion for what you're doing that makes it not only tend to be a better product and more successful, but it makes it more enjoyable. And I mean, I had to learn this the hard way with my previous publisher, with my adult novels. I like them. I think they're great. I had a good time with them. But when I started writing Super Drew, and I really I found something that I'm very passionate about, and it encompasses a lot of what really means a lot to me, because Super Drew is a really big geek like me. I mean, I'm wearing my Pew Pew shirt, and he is a disabled teenager, with some very similar disabilities to what I struggle with on a day-to-day basis. That I found that the passion for the character and the storyline made it so much easier to write, to continue writing, to pursue it, and to see it through to the end, even when it does get hard. Because I mean, don't get me wrong, it doesn't matter how passionate you are, it's going to be hard. That's all there is to it. But finding something that you really, really love and just sticking with it, and that's the best thing to do. And when you're passionate about it, people will feel that passion from it, and they'll get passionate about it, and then it just kind of snowballs. And so even, you know, going off of that previous question of what would you write if you could write anything, oh, I'm super lucky because I would write Super Drew if I could write anything. But if you start going for it, it'll come, you know, other people will get on board with it. And so just don't be afraid to go for what you really, really want to do, and just do it.
I think my best advice is just to read. I think a lot of people say that, and a lot of people who write are natural readers, I think, but it's the best way to hone your craft and to kind of learn by osmosis, you know. So just read widely, across genres, just read.
It's okay to take your time. And it kind of ties back to me being older, but I mean, you know, people think, well, I have this deadline, you know, I have a sale by date or something, and that's not really true. And it's okay, you know, you're working on a book you love. It's okay to take the time to write that book to the best of your ability. It's okay to be choosy about, you know, you're querying and you're trying to find an agent if that's the route you're going. Don't have to take the first offer if it feels a little strange, or something doesn't feel right, then don't do it, and you'll get other offers. And you know, it's that sense of, we don't need to be desperate, because if you're writing, if the talent is there, if the will is there, if the love is there, then you know you're going to have a chance. And it may be that you'll decide you want to do something like an author co-op publication instead. So I just say, you know, don't rush into things. Don't choose the first offer that comes along if it feels weird to you. I mean, if you feel great about it, that's lovely, but it's your work. It's your, you know, creation and your heart that's going out there. So really take care of it, and know that you're going to have a lot of opportunities, so don't panic.
Sylvia here. Thanks for tuning in. Here's to many more years and many more great books from Snowy Wings Publishing.
I feel like this is a good edit point anyway. You guys, we're doing great.
Good job,
Like seriously.
everyone.
No, seriously.